Fire Engineering Radio and to our show, Pride and Ownership, the Love for the Job. I'm your host, Chief Rick Lasky, and a couple quick things I want to mention before we move on and talk to our guest today, and we've got a great topic to cover with you. Just want to remind everybody, it's that time. It's been that time. FDIC is rapidly approaching. Make sure that you're getting your registration done, that you've got your hotels aligned. 28,000 people there for the whole week. If you don't want to be driving in from a ways from your hotels, you need to probably register now. Chief Halton and Diane Feldman got some great programs planned, and some new stuff, some old stuff, some heavy hitters, some returnees, all that. It's going to be a great conference as usual, both hot and classroom, and the exhibits obviously are second to none. So make sure you're getting that going. On a personal note, I wanted to send a little congratulations out, and it's going to be a daddy bragging on his boy. My son graduated boot camp up at Great Lakes north of Chicago from the Navy, and we'll start all his training, his corpsman training and everything coming up here in a couple days. So congratulations to my son Rick. His division 904 scored number 1, and he's just ate up with it. He is into it big time. Like you wouldn't believe. And the one thing I just wanted to mention here a little bit is recently, just the other day, actually, we had the passing of an actual. I don't know. I can sum it up as good as they did on CNBC, but the passing of an incredible, just patriot, just unbelievable. This is Colonel Robert Howard, Green Beret. This man was absolutely amazing. Makes you proud to be an American. He was a recipient of the Congressional Medal of Honor, yet he was nominated 3 times. Because keep in mind you can only win it once during a lifetime. And when you read what he was nominated for those 3 years, those 3 different times, it's absolutely incredible. They're talking about him being the most decorated serviceman in our pretty much our history. Just you need to go. Google his name, Colonel Robert L. Howard. Go to MSNBC. Watch the video clip they did on him. This guy received. They downgraded. think about this. They downgraded the second 2 nominations for the Congressional Medal of Honor to Silver Stars. He got, I don't know how many Bronze Stars. He got 8 Purple Hearts. He was wounded 14 times at 24 months. His awards are just incredible, but he was just a true soldier. On his dying bed, one of his comments was, "Don't forget the troops at Christmas." 36 years active, 50 years total with the government, traveling to Iraq, Afghanistan, all over the world to visit with the troops. It's worth your time, folks, to Google his name, read about him. I don't know. It just fell out of my chair when I heard about this man. I would have done anything to not only just shook his hand, but to have been in the same building with him. Would have been an honor. So, Colonel Howard, rest in peace, and it's just an incredible person, that brave, and we're just honored to have you in our world. So, thank you. Today, one of the areas we want to talk about for a while, is the Chief's Aide, the Battalion Chief's Aide, and this topic comes up often during classes. There are a lot of departments out there that use this position. There are some that wish they could. There are some that there's just not going to be the budget for it and everything else. But, right now with the budget shortfalls a lot of departments are seeing, one of the first things you see go is training. Then you start seeing other things get cut, and then you start seeing staffing go, unfortunately. And like we've all talked about before, and you've heard Chief Halton's stance and some of the other great leaders out there about how we need to be fighting for our staffing, and not, just going belly up on some of that stuff, but just fighting it. That should be the last thing you should have to give up, and just keep fighting to keep what you've got, every single position. But one of the first things you see go in a lot of departments are those positions they feel are non-essential. Which what an absolutely incredibly stupid word to use when you talk about the Battalion Chief's Aide, because bringing that program to Lewisville, Texas, people ask me if I could put my finger on one thing that what would be the greatest thing we've done here. It's not all the great programs, it's not all the great things that we've been able to accomplish, and I'm very proud of this department and the men and women that work here. Nothing comes close to what we've done by adding that battalion chief's aide position, both operationally and administratively. So we worked hard to get it. It's an incredible program. Our firefighters are safer for it. We're a better-run fire department because of it. But I've asked two brothers to come on the show today and visit with you. The first one is Lieutenant Chris Delisio. Chris just retired from the FDNY. I met Chris through my best friend, Battalion Chief John Salka. Chris has taught with John for years and has done training for years, pretty much all over the country. Chris was a division aide in the 6th Division before moving over to drive for Chief Salka, and we're going to talk about pretty much how they run things, how the aides run things and everything. But he retired with 23 years from the FDNY, still teaches at FDIC, as well as all over Firehouse, all over the country. Retired as a lieutenant on Ladder 50, and still volunteering in West Havistar in New York. Chris is a great guy, and we're going to get to him in just a second. And then our other guest is Engineer Gary Apple from the Louisville Fire Department. Gary's one of our aides here. He drives for Battalion Chief Jerry Wells. Gary's been with us, I think, right at 25 years, maybe a little bit more if you count his volunteer time. Gary's, absolutely incredible at the position. Runs the shift. His battalion chief makes that comments all the time. He goes, I get there and I don't know what I'm supposed to do because everything's done already. So, Chris, welcome, buddy.
Good morning. Welcome. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, pal. Gary, welcome, bud.
Good morning, Chief. Good to be here.
Hey, Gary, how are you?
Good, Chris. I was just wondering, you're going to bring your mitt to FDIC this year?
Hopefully, if we're able to get out there, I would definitely bring my baseball mitt.
I'm looking forward to it.
It's great having you guys here, and we've talked about this so many times. I know, Chris, you and I for years, and I just first of all I want to start off by thanking you because when we first got this position approved years ago, you were all set to be promoted, and you had taken some vacation time, and you actually canceled your vacation, came in and worked with our guys, and we sent them into the Bronx, and I just want to thank you again for doing that, buddy. That was awfully nice of you, being just a true brother, pal.
You're very welcome, Chief. The doing the job, you realize how important it is, and I think, Gary, you realize it once you start doing it, the effect you can have on the fire ground and on the overall operation of the department.
Oh, very true, and I don't think I really knew until I got in there. I knew that the aide had from just one of my buddies was in there prior to me being there. I mean, he had a lot of responsibility and a lot of things that went on that he was doing while the other guys were, cooking dinner or watching a movie or whatever. And it is a huge effect, and it's really kind of been an eye opener for me since I've been in there.
Well, and Chris, the FDNY has had the aides pretty much forever. Mm-hmm. This was something new for us. So it's kind of neat to have both of you here because we've got kind of both. Just like Gary said, for our guys, a lot of it's this new. It's no longer new here now, but it was this new venue. What's expected and what's going to happen and all that. Where I've been with you over in New York City, where I was visiting with a visiting aide, if you will, who said he's been waiting 6 months to get in there and drive for a month, waiting for a guy to be off for, I don't know if it's surgery or vacation, because he was getting ready to take his lieutenant's exam, and he wanted to get in there and do that job. How important is that position? And I'll ask Chris this, and I'll jump to Gary. How important, Chris, is that position in New York City to a young firefighter who's looking to move up as a lieutenant someday?
I think it's very important. It's a must-do job. You get an opportunity to see the operational end, see the decisions that chiefs have to make, get a better insight of the day-to-day operations of the fire department. When you're a firefighter assigned to a company, you have your responsibilities within the company, your position, your training, your tools. You really don't know what else is going on in the department in terms of the manpower, building inspection issues, training issues. When you're an aide, you're seeing all this. The paperwork end. It's amazing that with computers and email, they said we were going to cut down on paper. I don't know where we did, but, I mean, the tremendous amount of paperwork that comes through the office.
Well, and Gary, you were here when we, and Chris Lawler was right before you when we sat with Chris and Brian and Dean, and we filled up the whole dry erase board with everything. Actually, I think it was kind of overwhelming. And you knew it going into it because you had done a little bit for Chief Wells, and you had a chance to visit with Lawls. But to sit and look at that board and go, oh my God, it was almost overwhelming because some guys were just saying, guys, well, this is just a glorified driving position. You're just the chief chauffeur and all this. And I'm like, that is the most, it's bullshit. I'm sorry, I wasn't supposed to say that. But anyway, that is the farthest thing from the truth as to how important that position is. Gary, right, we've talked about, when we put that list up, we went through all that, and I said, you will tell the battalion chief when he talks on the radio, where he puts his helmet, and where he sits, and not to touch any buttons. And as much as we were kind of joking, there was some seriousness to that, though, at the same time, wasn't there, Gary? When it comes to what you do for Chief Wells, how important of a role do you think that plays for him?
I think it helps him a lot. And in the beginning of our battalion chief program, even, those chiefs, they drove themselves, they did everything. And it's not that driving is not important. It's a major part of my job. But while I'm driving, we're talking about second lines coming in. And our MDT system at this point is good in the fact that we can overlay hydrants. He's got things lined out for me when we get there. I can have a second water source coming in after he's gotten out and taken command. But my job, and Chris will echo this, I think, that our job starts prior to the shift. I'm there 30 to 45 minutes early. I've got things lined out, and that's what Chief Wells is kind of joking about. He comes in, I've got the board laid out, accountability's ready to go, manpower. I know where I've got to move people and where I've got extra people, and it goes essentially daylight to dark.
Well, and Chris, let me ask you, because Gary and I'll come back to Gary for a second, because Gary, I wanted you to describe just what you were doing even a little bit further. Chris, let's walk into a New York City firehouse to the battalion chief's office prior to shift change, and tell me what the aide's doing.
Well, he's there generally an hour before the start of the tour. Come in, he's going to check the manpower, see if he's got to move anybody, see which chief he's driving, because sometimes you're not always driving the same chief. Check to see how many runs they've had. Do they need manpower? Is there any equipment that got to be delivered any place that we have to go? Or the fire reports caught up? Is there anything going on in that particular battalion that they need to know about? Or are we doing something in the division today? So, yeah, like Gary said, you come in, you get everything set. The chiefs have never driven. We've always done the driving. And that's, while it's a big part, it's a small picture so that the chief can worry about other things that have to go on the fire ground.
Besides the fact I've seen Chief Salka drive. So
yes, I know. I know. I learned this job from a very dear friend of mine who was an aide after he got injured. And he told me that you need to be one step ahead of the chief. You need to anticipate what he wants, what he needs. So it's a lot of responsibility, and you've got to work good with the guy and be able to understand and anticipate what he's going to do, how he's going to run his fire operation or his shift. Gary, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that's dead on, Chris. And it's the same deal as you were saying, and I'm kind of thinking here too. You've definitely got to have a good relationship with your boss and know what he's thinking. And Chief Wells and I have been together for all of our career. Off and on, we came into rookie school together, got to work with him when he was the captain. I was a firefighter for him. And he's always been one of those guys that kind of knew where he was going and what he was thinking. And so we can sit there and we finish sentences from time to time. It's like we're dead on. And you do got to be ahead of that guy, whether you're on the fire ground and he's not gaining any ground, but there's not anybody standing around with a tool in their hand. You've got to get him some more guys or,
right.
Whatever he needs, you've got to have it for him prior to him needing it.
Well, and Gary, tell me about that. You and Chris are both talking about that partnership you have to have with the chief you're working with, and we'll say working for, but it's working with, because I've personally witnessed just how critical this position is, both from my standpoint coming in the command position at fire, but just sitting there having a cup of coffee, watching you do your stuff. And let me start with Gary first, and you guys just bounce around here. Tell me about the trust you have to have in that position with that chief? That you just talked about the partnership. Tell me about, first off, the trust you have to have between the two of you.
Well, the trust issue we've talked earlier. There are things that the aide knows that goes on in that office that everybody else doesn't need to know. Whether it's a personnel issue, it's, hey, this is coming down the pike. You need to be ready for it. But you're privy to some of that stuff that is really just you, and you need to be. This is what we're thinking. Here's where we're going, but it doesn't need to be out right now. So, and it's the trust in making good decisions, and he's got his guys' interest at heart and their safety.
Well, and Chris, how important is that confidentiality? What's one of the worst things, buddy, you can do with that information? You're sitting in that office that you just were privy to something that the guys may not know.
Let it out is probably the worst thing you can do. If you have a good rapport and John's your best friend, him and I have a tremendous rapport. There were things that I would handle so that he did not have to get involved.
Right.
Okay. As my friend Pat had told me, he says, your job is to kind of protect the chief. Protect him from some of the stuff that he does not need to deal with. So you get some information, you get some stuff, you handle it.
And in doing so, you're protecting the guys, though, too.
Right. Well, that's the goal, is to kind of quell everything, because if it gets to a certain level, it's at everybody's hands now.
Right.
So if you could handle it at the aide level, Gary, correct me if I'm wrong. If the aide can handle it, let him handle it.
Yeah.
I can remember a few things on holidays. Our job, you had to cover your own company for holidays with the manpower and chauffeurs. Well, a Thanksgiving, one company didn't have a chauffeur. So we did some finagling, and I did the aide's job in the office, but I ended up having to drive so that there were no issues in the company.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
The bond between the chief and the aide, it's almost like a marriage.
Right.
Okay, correct me if I'm wrong, Gary. Okay.
No, you're dead on again there, buddy.
And once you get that rapport with the chief, he's going to realize that you have his best interest at heart and the department's best interest.
Mm-hmm.
My first day as a division aide was September 11, 2001. Okay?
Oh.
Talk about being thrown into the fire.
Amen.
Right.
Okay? That was, and I had known the chief. I knew the chief that I was going to drive, but I didn't know him personally. Well, we spent 24 hours together, and by the end of the 24, I think he realized that I was there to help him and protect the guys.
Well, and unfortunately, in fact, we were just talking about this morning, Chris and Gary. And Gary, Robert Odom's been driving for Chief Cunningham here for about 3 years, and he's getting ready to go back online, and he's done a great job with it. And another guy's getting ready to move back in there, and there were still some guys that we had that said, I don't need nobody to drive me. And in fact, Chief Mike Lindley was one of the ones that said, Chief, I really don't think I need somebody to drive me and work with me. And a year later, he was nominating his aide for Firefighter of the Year.
Yeah. Sure.
I mean, that's how important that position was. It was realized. It was one of those where you almost have to see it to truly understand it.
The aide position has kind of a stigmatism to it. Oh, the guy doesn't want to go to fires anymore. He's looking for this, he's looking for that. It's not that. When you do the job, you realize, oh my God, okay, what the responsibility this guy has.
Well, and most people, I don't think, and Gary, could you get away with that here, or Chris, with your job? I don't think someone may sneak in there. We let our battalion chiefs handpick them here,
right?
But you wouldn't last. You couldn't go in there. You can't be a person that doesn't want to do the job they want to go. You can't do it. It would be, I don't know. I don't want to say fall apart because you're the chief there, but you couldn't be one of those people that doesn't give a damn about it, or is just there trying to find it, because there's nothing easy about it. I guess that's the way to say it. It's not, well, I'll just go drive for a little bit and work 5 more years and retire. If you've got that set up out there, you're working somewhere I don't know about. I'm just saying.
Oh no,
it would if you went in there with that attitude, it wouldn't take very long that it would manifest itself, and everybody would know that, you're just trying to coast along, and because there is a whole lot of exhaustive measures, I guess, or you're always pouring yourself into it. If you're not doing the best that you can do for your boss and for the guys that we're trying to support out there so they can get their job done.
Well, and Gary, take me real quick. Take me through. You're working with Jerry right now. You pull up a 2-story single-family frame with fire showing. Take me through what you already talked about on the way in. Hydrants. Walk me through what you're doing. You drop him off. He's out taking care of business. Take me through what you're doing, buddy.
Well, I'm aware of listening to the radio coming in. I know what companies and what part of town I'm in. I know who I'm going to get first. I've got them down on my assignment sheet, and then one of us, sometimes he will just jump out of the truck as we pull by, and he's telling me to give a size up. I can tell by the amount of fire whether we're going to have to go to a second or it's something that, it's small enough that we're going to hold with the companies we have coming. Calling a second alarm, I know who's coming second, coming up. Everybody as we know, we have an assignment depending on how we arrive, unless that is changed by the chief that's in charge. But we know who's going to work. We know what they're going to be doing. And if it looks like he's not getting enough, if he hadn't turned around to me yet and held up, his 2 fingers or his 3 fingers for a third or whatever, I'm responsible for getting that there to him, so that he's got what he needs. And then I'm making sure that I know what assignments, if it has changed anything or however the companies have arrived, I know who's doing what, who's on the first line, who's on the second line. We've got our second water source. And then I need to be knowing where everybody is so that if something catastrophic does happen, God forbid, I know who it was and in the general area they are, so when the RIT team activates, we know where they need to be and what they need to be doing.
Well, and we've had to do that a couple of times here, Gary, and Chris, we've had to do it. I know you've done it where when it's time to do a roll call or a PAR, and you're taking care of business, and I don't care what accountability system you have, it's one thing to think that you can run a house fire, an apartment building fire, multifamily dwelling, whatever, commercial, by yourself. There's a lot of guys, and God bless them, there's a lot of guys and gals out there that'll tell you, yeah, I can take care. I can pull up and I can run that fire by myself, and that's all fine when you've got 3 engines let out doing or working or doing their stuff, and a truck or 2 and all that. But don't you agree? The moment let's talk about that for a second. The moment the emergency traffic or the Mayday drops, if you think you're going to be, and please, nobody out there in our listeners, don't take offenses. If you're a chief officer and you think you're going to run that fire efficiently and run the firefight, the operation side of that, and the rescue of one of your own, and do it efficiently and not miss anything, something bad's going to happen. I mean, Chris, do you agree?
Yes. There is just too much information and too many tasks on the fire ground for one person to be able to handle it. And the way I looked at it is the critical tasks are the chief's responsibility. Gary, you hit the nail on the head. We're the accountability people on the fire ground. We have to know where everybody is, and what companies they're from. And with our job, it's very easy because you have the ride list. You have the printout on the ticket. And I used to use the company designate, the company numbers I would put down for first line, second line.
Right.
You've also got to anticipate what he wants, what he's going to need. And when you have a good relationship with the chief, you can get that manpower there before he's calling for it. Chief, I got you 2 extra towel ladders. Mm-hmm. You got it. Oh, by the way, they're 95 footers because you're going to need the reach. This is the type of thing. I don't know how one person could do it.
Well, and there's some, obviously there's departments out there that have to do it because they don't have a battalion chief's aide, and God bless them, and they do. But when you work the tactics and strategy end of it, and when you do the line of duty death investigations, when you sit in on that, and you get to a point when the Mayday hits, when the emergency's out, we often it will contribute to the bad side of what's going on, because you're right, it's hard enough to run the fire and take care of things with, you got radio traffic, you got your tactics and strategy you're figuring, you're working through, you got companies coming and going, you're doing your stuff, and now you drop that in. Probably the most stressful situation you will ever be involved in your career is managing a Mayday. You need help. You need a partner. You need someone
right.
that's there, right? I mean,
right. And that partner can have the answers to your questions that you have. We have everybody accounted for. He's from this such and such company. This is the guy that's missing. It's another set of ears on the radio.
Yes.
We have 2 radios the Aide carries. He carries a fireground tactical radio. Then he carries a citywide radio where he can actually talk to the dispatchers. Now, you can get the information right to the dispatcher to get the extra companies right away. Or if there's a delay in a company coming in, he knows about it. Chief, they're delayed. We've got to operate with what we've got right now. They're delayed because of weather, snow, whatever. But it's another set of eyes and ears on the fire ground.
It's that safety valve that's critical. I'm telling you, again, folks, to our listeners, you got to see it to truly grasp it and talk to some of the guys. We got, Chris, and Gary knows it because he works with them, and Gary's been here 25 years plus. We've got some 30, 35-year chief officers here that, and I think John has said it best, you take my Aide away from me, I'm retiring.
Exactly.
He has said that before.
Yes.
And you said it, and Gary said, Gary, it's that whole thing you mentioned before, finishing each other's sentences. Chris just said same thing. When you're on the fire ground, how many times, again, are you and Jerry looking at each other through the window, or you're looking at each other across the lawn, and you have already got coming for him what he's looking for without him even, you know what I'm saying? How many times does that happen?
You'd like for it to happen more than it does. We're kind of fire duty slow in our part of the world sometimes, but it doesn't matter if it's in the yard or it's on an extrication where he needs a third ambulance or another helicopter or whatever. You've got to be able to see what's going on, get the whole picture, and then think where he's going with it and what they're going to need, and you've got it coming. Hopefully you're on the ball and you've got it coming for him, and it just makes what he's got going on easier to deal with, and he can think about the next step.
Well, and Chris, we've even taken it a step further here, just staffing wise, where we called the position a field incident tech position, a fit, and there was a couple of different reasons. One is it was hard to push through the chauffeur or the chief's aide or the driver thing, to folks that are involved in the fire service. So, all kidding aside, the field incident technician sounded,
It sometimes works with the people who have the checkbook.
You know what? Exactly, and it did, and I think guys would be screaming if you tried to take that position away. Now that they've got it, but here, I mean, Gary, you're doing uniform inspections, you're doing turnout gear inspections. Besides all the running the commissary for our guys, Chris. They're the one. Our aides are the ones they're going to with uniform issues, turnout gear issues, supply issues, all that stuff. And I'm telling you, just to have that position in place, just like you talk about some of the things you do in New York City, and Gary talked about here in Louisville, our human resources department has come to depend on it, because so many of those things that used to fester or get missed before, whether it's an FMLA, someone's leave with an injury or family issue, those are few and far between. In fact, I can't remember the last one we've missed because the Aide is on top of it.
Right. Those are the things that guys don't realize. On our job, you're responsible for the manpower for 5 to 6 companies every tour. So you have all that manpower to handle. All the assorted paperwork, the CD-72s, the knifers reports, the fire reports. You've got to do those. So you've got a lot of work that people don't see, might not understand, but they were like, wow, we've always got 5 guys coming in every tour, or we got 4 guys coming in every tour, depending on their manpower. How does this happen? Oh, wait a minute. Those are the things that guys don't see that this guy does. And if he's got a good rapport with the chief, it can make his job a lot easier.
Well, and how many, and let me throw this one back to Gary, because I know specifically of a couple, and Chris, I'm sure you could chime in too with them, is, Gary, I'm going to say a point, just very bluntly, how many guys' careers have you saved, or medically, a guy's off, and we've had people do injuries where they haven't written them up appropriately and correctly, and workers' comp was going to deny the claim, to where the Aide gets it and goes, wait a minute, this isn't done right, you're not going to turn this in yet, because if you do, one of your own guys is going to get screwed out of his benefits. I mean, how many times have you seen that happen where at Aide here, Gary has been able to fix that?
Well, more than once, more than what you would think or hope. That's the same thing as having that extra set of eyes and ears on the fireground, because it doesn't necessarily have to come across my desk, but you do see that from time to time, and it's like, man, Chief, you might ought to look at this again before it gets turned in. I mean, because most of it is sent to him, but it does get printed out. We keep a hard copy of all the reports in our office, and you see it, it's like, man, I don't know. This doesn't look right. Maybe we need to do a little investigating, and because you're right. I mean, it makes a difference in a guy's career.
Oh, and I'm telling you, and Chris, you said it earlier too, even where. And I even mentioned it with Gary and the guys here. The realization, when you're a young firefighter, and I've said it before, where I've had chiefs that don't get when the guys are bitching about the chief, that's normal. When guys are sitting around a table talking about, and I used to have a chief that would get very upset here, and he didn't grasp that. I said, look, that's normal. In fact, when you and I were firefighters, we were probably banging our fist aloud saying the chief don't, because you know what? We didn't understand budgets. We didn't understand the process. A lot of our young firefighters, as great as these men and women are, couldn't really tell you about their health benefits or their pension because it's not on their radar screen right now. And you know what? That's normal and that's okay. All of a sudden, you walk into that office as the chief's aide, and we were just talking about this with Aide, Gary. It's like you got to be. Nobody told me I was going to have to do all this, and then you start seeing the effects of that. And Chris John has said he's answered the phone and people hang up because they want to talk to the aide.
Exactly.
He says, I rarely answer the phone. I answer the phone, 18 battalion Chief Salka, click, because they want to talk to the aide. I mean,
listen, I've gotten phone calls before I've come into work on my cell phone about situations, okay, so that I know when I get there, okay, we're going to fix this today.
Yeah.
All right. You try to do the right thing as much as you can for the brothers and the chief. And sometimes guys need to realize that the chief is looking out for their best interest, but sometimes his hands are tied.
Right.
Okay, so, it's true. I guess in the military it'd be the executive officer.
Right.
Mike Abishoff in his book talks about a guy that he got that was doing his fitness reports for him. And all of a sudden, all the fitness reports are done correct. Everything is done. He is up to speed. He's actually ahead of schedule. That's an aide. That's an assistant.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you know what? This will sound goofy. You can see it in the movies, the military movies, where you see that, for that general, you'll see that aide, and who's the first person they turn to? I mean, just talk to them. The first person they turn to is their aide. That's the first person they turn. I mean, and it's not some glorified driving position. It is absolutely the most incredible thing we've done here on this fire department. Hands friggin' down. Operation Mystery, I know I mentioned before, we are safer.
Yes.
We are better organized. Now, the hard part is, and I'll talk, is keeping the guys in those positions, because Gary's on his way up the ladder. You saw it. It's hard to keep guys in that position, because just like that young firefighter wanted to come and do it, Chris, in your place, Gary, we've had guys here that, if it's, let's talk promotion time. When it's promotion time, you're taking that company officer, assessment.
Mm-hmm.
Aside from him maybe to, read some different books, how good are you already at running the fires? Mm-hmm. How good are you already at doing the in-baskets, the personnel? How good are you're already doing that stuff, right?
Oh, yeah, it helps you a bunch. And you've got, not that any of our guys don't know what our SOPs and our operating guidelines say, but you do need to know just a little bit more, because there are those, gray areas, those questions that people don't deal with every day. You get the phone call, they call the office, the aide answers the phone, and it's like, hey, I got a guy doing this, we need to do this, and it's just like, well, hang on, we can or we can't. And, like I say, the guys in the field doing a great job, but they may not necessarily know all the little nuances and the fine lines or the gray areas that are out there that we deal with every day.
Well, let me ask Gary this one first, and I want to ask Chris the same question. Gary, are you or are you not, and again, an arm of the battalion? When you call one of the firehouses, in reality, who are they talking to? Are they talking to Engineer Apple, or are you talking to Chief Wells? They're talking to Chief Wells, aren't they?
Yeah, a little bit of both, depending on what the situation is. Yeah.
But what I'm getting at there, though, is the other person on the phone, and this is directed towards those that'll be answering the phone when your chief's aide call you, if you haven't figured this out yet, is it's pretty much like if Gary Apple calls you, if Chris Delisio calls you and tells you this is what I need done, that's what needs to be done. There's no arguing. There's no questioning. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
hopefully the guys understand that it's not anything that I wanted to do personally, because sometimes it's not a very popular request or statement or whatever that happens sometimes. But it's like, and you talked about it earlier, and Chris did too. We make those calls sometimes, and it was like, hey, Captain, I've got to have this take place, and there's just a silence. But it's the fact of they don't know what's going on in the other 6 fire stations in our city with the other 38 guys that we have to support every shift.
Right.
And so it's like one of those days, like, look, I'm not making this up, and it's not something that's popular, probably, this request, but I didn't come up with it just, out of the seat of my pants. This is something that the chief knows it's got to happen. I'm just the one making the call, and, let's do it and move on and, try to have a good day.
Well, and Chris, how far did the conversation go? I'll take a chance to say if it ever did. I'm sure maybe on a rare occasion, when you were talking to somebody at the station and they questioned you or had an issue, I mean, how much further did that conversation go?
It didn't go too much further because the chief said, get your jacket, let's get in the car, we're going to go pay a visit.
There you go.
I made a phone call to a firehouse one day, told them we were coming. And when the chief's going to go visit, everybody should be in their proper attire, particularly the division chief. When the division chief shows up, you need to show the respect for the rank and the individual. Well, I called the house, told him we were coming. He goes inside to do his inspection, and they're not in the proper uniform.
Uh-oh.
He politely said, Chris, could you go to the car, please? I went and sat in the car, okay? And the phone was ringing when I got back to the firehouse about, we're sorry. I'm like, I don't want to hear it. I called you. I gave you a phone call. I warned you. Now, you got to apologize to him, Sometimes, and that's the problem. Gary, you talked about guys knowing the SOPs. They know the SOPs from the firefighting standpoint, from the job that they're assigned.
Right.
As an aide, you see the SOP from the chief standpoint or an officer standpoint.
Right.
You're not worried particularly about, is the guy getting the roof? Or what is his assignment? Get the roof. You just want to make sure that he's got it.
Right.
It gives you a better overall picture of operating with those guys.
Exactly.
One of the things that I found when you had a covering chief, or in our job, captains will work as a battalion chief, and there'll be an acting battalion chief when a chief is not available. That's where a good aide comes in and can save the reputation of the battalion and that, because he's got a guy that's not used to the position, but he's going to operate just like if there was a chief there.
Right.
Well, let me ask you this: and I've seen it here. What does that do for? And I'll throw this to both of you. When you've got John Salka riding next to you, and you guys got that partnership going, and Gary, you've got Jerry Wells riding next to you, your partnership, and now you've got Captain Craig Hall is good captain. You got Captain Hall moves up, and he's going to ride in the buggy, and Chris, you've got a covering chief, or let's say an acting. Let's do someone that's not wearing the white hat yet, moving up into that position. How important is it? I mean, how important is it? It's like a rhetorical question. God, I can't believe I'm asking it. But how important is it to that acting officer to have that aide already in place?
I've had, thank you very much. I've had them buy me dinner, and I've had them realize that it is an important job. That's probably the biggest eye-opener, because even sometimes some of the captains would be like, oh, he's just an aide. I had an incident where it was a captain. He was his first time ABCing, and we have a fire in a 300 by 300 commercial building, first due. And he was a little bit overwhelmed, to say the least. And I told him, just worry about the fire ground. I'll take care of everything else.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm calling the additional alarms, getting the accountability, doing that. That's a good aide. That's an aide that's looking out for everybody on the fire ground, including that captain. And by no fault of his own, because he's operated in a different mode. He's operating in a company mode, not in a overall battalion mode.
Well, and Gary, I've seen that thing you talked about before. I've seen where Chief Wells has just turned to you and looked at you, and you're already bumping things up an alarm, or you're already calling for the extra help at a pin-in or something, and all that. Let me kind of change that just for a second here and ask you. Because I don't want to run us out of time because there's so much great stuff to talk about at this position. Gary, what and see if you can pick one out for me. Your most rewarding moment as a chief's aide, whether it's fire ground or in the firehouse or whatever. I mean, I can think of two that you've done, but if you could pick one out now, what would be probably, if you're going to say, this has been a damn good position, but if I said, so what was one of your best moments?
I think probably, Chief, the 6th alarm fire on the east end of town in 6th district. Throw Chief, or not actually throw him out, but let him out, and then I go get a spot where I can kind of see everything, because I know we're going to be here for a while. And then Chief Reed, our division chief over training, comes in, and Chief Wells, we probably lagged a time or two, but it was the fact of when we saw that his manpower was dwindling and we weren't making the progress we wanted to see, it was just like, I don't have to have him tell me that he needs more help. We're calling the alarms. They're coming. He's turning around looking at me, and it's just like, give me a minute. They're coming. I promise you they're coming. They'll be here in a minute. It's just we're kind of out there in no man's land. And just, even the day-to-day stuff that we do, it's no kidding. It's daylight to dark. We start before everybody shows up. We finish after everybody's in bed sometimes, or, doing whatever they're doing in the firehouse, because it's not just going to fires. It's not just driving the chief. It's in the mornings. It's making sure manpower is spread throughout the city the way it needs to be to function, to in the evening making sure that the payroll and our personal training gets put in for all the reports. And, this time of year, working with Chief Brown on uniforms, the plethora of stuff that you have to do to get all that ordered, to make sure it's the right stuff, and just accounting for it. So,
well, I can remember one situation that always pops into mind is when we had one of our firefighters, Kyle Allen, get really bad sick on us due to a difficulty after surgery, and his own guys, I mentioned it on one of the previous shows, his own guys went to check on him, and he actually coded right in front of him. His best friend did CPR on him, and again, and it wasn't, Gary, just you on the phone, those are those times where being able to take care of business and getting the wheels in motion to get people where they need to be to the hospital and honor guard and families and girlfriends and parents and all that stuff, that's one of the ones that jumps right up for me. And again, had nothing to do with fighting fires, had nothing to do with any of that stuff. It had to do with you taking care of a brother and getting. A lot of guys forget that. They sit there and go, okay, all that just kind of happened. It was a miracle that people just showed up. But that was a lot of phone calling, a lot of coordinating, and everything else. And that one definitely, brother, pops into my mind. Chris, let me ask you the same question. One of your most rewarding moments as a chief's aide?
Fire on 3rd Avenue and 153 Street. Dwayne Reed. Ended up going to a 4th alarm, and I was actually a division chief aide at that time. And the citywide tour commander came up to me, or came up to the division chief, and liked the job that I was doing. We had probably 40 companies there, and I knew where every one of them was. And I had reserve companies in place. That I was like, wow, I guess they do really. That's when I realized, hey, they do pay attention to the aide. They do pay attention to the aide. For a citywide tour commander in our department to come over and search out the chief to say that, that was good. And, the reputation I had with John, I never let him down. He never once had to say anything to me, because I always did the right thing for him because of our relationship.
Buddy, I personally got to witness not only that relationship, because I know you two so well, and I don't think John can get a sentence out without talking about fires, without talking about how important that relationship with you has been in his career. But personally witnessing, watching fires in New York City and seeing, like you said, I always call one of the big chiefs, shows up and walks over, we'll walk over real nice to that, whoever that chief is, and then almost immediately go to the aide, and it's kind of like, all right, tell me what's really going on.
Exactly.
And I don't mean that as an insult to those chiefs.
No.
Don't get me wrong. It's like, all right, tell me, what do you got coming? What do you got? I mean, he gave me the kind of the update how he's running things, he's handling his strategy. All right, you give me the nuts and bolts of this thing. And I've seen that. And that's, Chris, that's what I do. Gary, I do it, right? I jump in the car with you middle of the night, and he's got everything laid out. All I got to do is figure out which microphone I'm talking on so I don't talk on the wrong channel.
Right. And when you think about it, the chief doesn't need to know how many companies he's got coming. He just needs to know that he's got companies coming. He doesn't need to know their designations. That's right. The aides. That's the, and it's kind of hard to say it's the mundane stuff on the fire ground. All he knows is he's got help coming. He doesn't need to know which companies, just, I got help coming, this is where I'm going to put them to work. I've got 4 engines coming and I got 5 trucks coming. No problem, Chief. They're on their way. They'll be here. I'll let you know as soon as they get here.
Yep.
I'll tell you, when Brian Freed and Dee Felposh and Chris Lawler went out to work with you for the first time, they came back. It wasn't even a week, and we had a pretty good, decent apartment building fire. Had 4 units going, people jumping out windows and all that. And I walked past Brian. He was in the buggy, and I said, "I'll be back in a moment." And next thing was I'm on the radio going, "All right, how many alarms you had?" He goes, 4th, and I was like, that was an incredible feat for this department because it was rare for the person in that position. Now Brian, is now the Division War training, but a person, like Gary said, to call the extra alarms. I'll just ask you, Gary, is there any fear whatsoever if you go an extra alarm and we end up not needing a whole alarm? Are you at all worried?
No, not at all. Not at all, because you think that this is what you need at that moment, and we get a handle on it. Those guys get to come in, and for lack of a better term, we get to see some of our brothers that we don't see, a lot of the time. But you always want to be, and you've taught us this, and we knew this. You want to be ahead of where you're going. You don't want to be behind trying to play catch up. And if you don't have those guys there, you're behind from the start, and there's just no need in doing that. So
I've used this parallel before, Gary and Chris. Wayne Gretzky, regarded as the best hockey player to live, probably the great one. One of his key things was they said, "How did you get to where you're at?" And he said he even does a motivation, does a leadership talk on it. I tried to be where the puck was going, and it's the same thing. Is my buddy, Tom Freeman, Chief Tom Freeman, Lyle Woodward said for years, any mope in a white helmet can stand in the front lawn and burn to the ground what he's got in front of him or her. A good officer is the one that can predict his or her next alarm, and that takes that aide. You're the one looking at the crystal ball. He or she's standing out on the front lawn taking care of business. You're looking at the crystal ball going, this ain't gonna, I need to get more help coming. I need to get them coming in this way. And the little behind-the-scenes things you never see or hear about, having that company come in for that opposite direction when someone else may not be thinking of it can make or break a scene sometimes. It's all that, catching that mayday that someone missed or that urgent call, Chris, or Gary, I'm saying? All those things are just, I'm telling you, I know it's like I'm beating a dead horse, but oh my goodness, I'm telling you, the position is it's overwhelming to think about all the great things that position does.
And I think one of the reasons that they're cut so quick is because people think they're just drivers.
Right.
Gary,
right.
You and I and every aide knows that it's more than just driving. If anything, that's the easy part of the job.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. Getting them from point A to point B, even with the people on the road that drive like they do, is a cakewalk compared to some of the stuff that goes on once you get there.
I'm serious. If we were to do that whole dry race board, like I said, you'd fill it up right in as small as you could with all that a good aide does throughout a shift, and even before the shift, after the shift, you know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
It's real quick before we run out of time here, Chris. You mentioned something the other day that I had never even thought about, buddy. And you mentioned about being able to how to use this position in a volunteer operation, that kind of thing. So, tell me about, you were talking about the other day. Let's talk about that real quick.
In the village of West Haverstraw in New York, Dave Krieger was the first chief to create an aides position. Dave's dad is a retired New York City firefighter, and he asked his dad to help him. And he said, okay. So what they did is John has got a clipboard. He's got the accountability system. He's got all that in his vehicle. He responds to the fire. He goes to the chief's car, and he operates the radio. He does the accountability. He does it. It's kind of like, two different people. They're not in the same car, but he does the same job that we did on the fire ground.
Mm-hmm. Well, and let me ask you this. So many times, when you're teaching, you'll get folks that come up and go, you know what, I got a couple great guys, but they're at a point now where one of them can't wear an air pack anymore because of a back injury, or can't, there's something keeping them from actually, entering the building. And a lot of guys will, we'll just go ahead and change air bottles, which is all important. But I thought about this after we talked, what a great position for that firefighter that
Mm-hmm.
maybe can't make the entry anymore. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
People have said before, well, what positions that we've talked about, everything from rehab to driving the tanker or tender if you're out west, whatever you call it, to all those support functions. What a great idea! If you've got someone that's got their act together, you might have 2 or 3 of those guys been at a department for a long time. What a great position to put them in.
It has gotten with John that he does it for neighboring departments when they call us mutual aid.
Oh.
He goes to the scene. And think about it. Gary, as tough as our job is as career firefighters, when you're a volunteer, okay, you go from cutting the lawn to operating at an apartment building fire. Mm-hmm. Now you got somebody that will talk on the radio so you can focus on what's going on the fire ground.
Right.
Okay? You can focus on, and here's your accountability officer. He can check him in. John does a fast team sheet for us. When we're fast team for several departments around us, he has a sheet specifically for that. Fills it out, turns it in, so he knows who's on the fast team, what positions they are, whether they responded, and what tools and equipment we used.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a great, just a great endeavor, and it's got to help make those guys feel better knowing. I'm surrounded by volunteer departments where I live, and I know some of them personally, and depending on, and just like up there, what time of day it is, mm-hmm. what's going on, the holidays, whatever, you may get 40 guys, or you may get, 5. And let's face it, not that anybody's doing it intentionally. Sometimes accountability is not ever thought of. Everybody sees what needs to be done, and they go and do it. And then the next thing you know, you're missing a member, whether they've had a medical issue or there's something on the back side of the building that we didn't know went on. So it's just whether it's career departments or volunteer, if you can get somebody in there to do that. I mean, let's face it, accountability is a huge issue, and one of the things that needs to be taken care of early on in an incident to make sure that things go, properly when they need to.
Well, let me throw this at you two guys here, because we've talked about, we've touched on so many things about this position, about what it does operationally, administratively for the department, for the shift, how you're able to sidestep some landmines, Chris, like you talked about, and that partnership with your battalion chief, or with that chief, that trust, the confidentiality. You're the arm of the battalion chief. We've had maybe once or twice where somebody has maybe questioned that fit at a chief's aide when he's called a station, and that's one of those where here it won't be as much the battalion chief. I really don't want, I'm saying that doesn't need to go on. When that person calls, it's like the battalion chief's talking to you, and you pay attention, listen up, and just all the important role this position plays. Gary, if somebody wanted to get a copy of our SOGs on our field it's a tech position, or even come out and ride out with you and Chief Wells or with Chief Cunningham or Chief Kahn or whatever with any of the guys, let's shoot your email address out there and maybe the phone number for where you're going to be on B shift. So let me have an email address first.
Okay, the email address is going to be Apple. It's just GAPPLE at cityoflouisville.com, and it's LEWISVILLE, not Louisville, Kentucky.
Good place, but not spelled the same way.
Yeah, not anywhere near the same. That would be my email. Just shoot me an email. I can email the SOPs to you or get them to you or answer any questions you might have. Or if you actually want to talk to me, if you will call 972-219-3580, that is going to be to our administrative offices. And then they can either forward you to me if I happen to be on duty that day, or they'll make sure that I get the message, and I will get back in touch with you and help you in any way I can.
And I know, to our listeners out there, obviously we've been, you picked up on it, so we've been visiting with Lieutenant Chris Delisio, retired lieutenant from the New York City Fire Department, longtime aide in both not only the division, but in the 18th Battalion with Chief Salka, and Engineer Gary Apple, who's currently driving for Chief Jerry Wells here in Louisville. I know that Chief Wells and Gary, if there's someone out there that wants someone to come out and say, okay, I'm working in a suburban department or a metro department, what do I got to do? Give them a call. I mean, if you want them to come out and teach a program, if you want them to come out and get that going for you, give them a call. You'd be surprised if you're starting that position, call them and have them come out and do a program with your guys, a one-day program, whatever, and train them on that position. Get them coming out. And I know, Chris, you teach just a whole bag full of different topics. If somebody want to get a hold of you about your thoughts and your knowledge on this position or any other tactics or strategy, the safety and survival stuff, all the things you teach, how would they get a hold of you, Chris?
They can get a hold of me at my email address is C as in Charlie, D as in David, 1075 at AOL.com. They can also reach me at NYSFirechiefs.com, organization I work for in New York State, running their hands-on training. And I'll give you my cell phone. It's attached to my body now anyway, so 914-261-3994 is my cell phone number. Being retired every day is Saturday, so it's pretty good.
Well, and you're going to see if Gary's Gary, you making FDIC this year?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay, Gary will be at FDIC. Not only will he be attending, but he'll be playing. The pipes. He's a bagpiper. He's one of our piper. He'll be there. I know Chief Wells is teaching a class. Jerry, like I said, folks, if you want them to come out and visit with you, if you want to come out and visit with them, you want to come right out with them. If you want them to come out and teach a program on this position, they'll be more than happy to do that for you. If you need anything taught by Chris Delisio, again, if you've been through the firefighter safety and survival program at FDIC, you know, as soon as if you don't recognize his voice, you know who Chris is, because he was an intricate part of that program for many years and still is. I promise you on my word, you're going to get two great programs from both of these gentlemen and their partners. So, guys, I can't thank you enough. Chris, thanks, brother, for coming on the show. I've been trying to do this for a long time. We finally were able to get you and Gary together.
No problem. Thank you very much. It was an honor. Gary, always a pleasure to talk to you.
Enjoyed it, brother, and I look forward to seeing you in April up there.
Lord willing, yes, I will see you.
Oh, take care.
Take care.
Chris, thanks so much, brother.
No problem, Chief. Anytime.
Hey, Gary? Oh, I missed Gary already. So.
I'm here.
Oh, you there, buddy?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Gary, I want to say the same thing. I get to see you here all the time. I appreciate you coming on the show. You've got a couple good partners in Delenn Graham and now Dean Felposh, who was driving originally. One of the originals is moving back into to drive for Chief Cunningham. You got some good partners. You got a great battalion chief you work with. But Gary, thanks for taking the time out of the day as well, like Chris did, to spend some time with us and share some information.
It was my pleasure, Chief, and thank you for having me.
All righty. Thanks, guys.
Take care.
Well, take care.
Hey, we were visiting with Lieutenant Chris Delisio, retired lieutenant with the New York City Fire Department, and Engineer Gary Apple from the Louisville Fire Department. You've got their contact information if you need them. This position we've been talking about, the Battalion Chief's Aide, is absolutely critical and incredible. It's something that if you could pull it off, I know budgets are tight right now, and bring it into your department, you will never regret it. If you got it, you need to fight to the death to keep it. It's just absolutely has changed how we work here in Louisville for the better, both administrative and operationally. It's a great position. So with that being said, you can get a hold of me at Rick at prideandownership.com. If you got any questions or comments or ideas for a show, we appreciate you listening and taking care of business and keeping the tradition alive that's out there. With that, we always end this show with two very, very important words, and that is, be safe.